The unlikely volunteer Dr. Marcus Webb stood at the reinforced observation window, watching the massive creature pace restlessly in its containment chamber. The thorn beast, as the locals called it, was unlike anything he had encountered in his 20 years of xenobiology research. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with obsidian-black scales that gleamed under the artificial lights, the creature possessed 6 powerful limbs and a crown of razor-sharp spines that could slice through steel. Its 4 crimson eyes tracked every movement in the corridor beyond its prison. "You cannot be serious, Marcus," Zixara chittered, her mandibles clicking with agitation. The Zarian scientist's iridescent carapace shifted from deep purple to orange, a clear sign of distress among her insectoid species. "The thorn beast has already injured 3 of our most experienced handlers this cycle alone." Marcus turned from the window, his weathered face calm despite the concern in his colleague's compound. "That's exactly why I'm the right choice, Zix. Your people approach it like a specimen to be controlled. I see it as a living being that needs understanding." The research station on Zarion Prime had become Marcus's home for the past 2 years, ever since the Galactic Scientific Alliance had assigned him to study the planet's unique ecosystem. The Zarions, with their methodical approach to everything, had initially been skeptical of human research methods. But Marcus had proven his worth time and again, often finding solutions that their rigid protocols missed. "The conference on Kepler station is crucial for my career advancement," Zixara explained, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones typical of her species. "But I cannot leave Brutus unattended. The Council has made it clear that any incident involving the Thorn Beast could result in its termination." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Brutus? You named it?" A slight shift to pale blue indicated embarrassment. "It was a moment of weakness. The creature has been in our care for 6 months now. Despite its fearsome appearance, there are times when it seems almost lonely." This revelation didn't surprise Marcus. Throughout his career, he had learned that the most dangerous-looking creatures often possessed the most complex emotional lives. Earth's own history was filled with examples of animals that appeared monstrous, but proved to be intelligent and social when properly understood. The proposition. "Let me stay with him," Marcus said simply. "I've been studying the behavioral patterns from your reports. Brutus isn't aggressive by nature. He's defensive. There's a difference." Zixara's antennae twitched nervously. "The risk is too great. If something happens to you, the diplomatic implications alone would be catastrophic. Humans and Zarians have only recently established peaceful relations." Marcus stepped closer to the observation window, placing his palm against the reinforced glass. To everyone's surprise, the thorn beast stopped pacing and approached the barrier. Its 4 eyes focused on the human's hand, and for a moment something almost like curiosity flickered in that alien gaze. "Look at him," Marcus whispered. "He's not a monster. He's just misunderstood." The Zarion scientist observed the interaction with growing amazement. In all their months of study, Brutus had never shown such calm behavior around any of their personnel. The creature's spinal ridges, normally bristling with tension, had relaxed completely. "This is unprecedented," Zixara murmured, her scientific mind immediately cataloging the phenomenon. "His stress indicators have dropped to levels we've never recorded." Marcus smiled. "Animals, even alien ones, can sense intention. Your people see him as a threat to be contained. I see him as a being who needs companionship." After several minutes of internal debate, Zixara's carapace settled into a resigned shade of gray-green. "Very well, but there are strict protocols you must follow. Brutus is never to be removed from his containment chamber. His meals are delivered through the automated system at precisely scheduled intervals, and under no circumstances are you to enter his habitat directly. Understood?" Marcus nodded, though he was already formulating plans that might bend those rules. The first day. The following morning, as Zixara departed for the spaceport, Marcus settled into the observation room, with his equipment and a thermos of coffee. The thorn beast, Brutus, seemed to sense the change in routine. Instead of his usual aggressive pacing, He positioned himself near the window where he could observe the human. Marcus began his day as he always did, with careful observation and detailed notes. But unlike the clinical distance maintained by Zerion researchers, he found himself talking to the creature. "Good morning, Brutus. That's quite an impressive set of spines you've got there. Are those for protection, or do they serve another purpose?" The thorn beast tilted its massive head as if considering the question. Its eyes, which had always appeared cold and predatory in the security footage, now seemed more thoughtful. As the hours passed, Marcus noticed subtle changes in Brutus's behavior. The creature began responding to his voice with small movements, a tilt of the head, a shift in posture. When Marcus moved to different parts of the observation room, Brutus would reposition himself to maintain visual contact. "You're not just intelligent," Marcus realized aloud. "You're social. You need interaction." By midday, Marcus had made a decision that would have horrified his Zerion colleagues. The containment chamber had an emergency maintenance hatch, one that required manual override to open. The protocols were clear. It was only to be used in case of system failure. Marcus looked at the lonely creature on the other side of the glass and decided that isolation itself was a system failure. The bath. The maintenance hatch opened with a soft hiss, and Marcus stepped into the chamber carrying a bucket of warm, soapy water and several cleaning cloths. Brutus immediately backed away, his spinal ridges rising slightly, but there was no aggression in his posture, only caution. "Easy, big guy," Marcus said softly, setting down his supplies. "I noticed you've been trying to clean yourself against the walls. Those scales of yours are looking pretty dull. How about we try something different?" The thorn beast watched with fascination as Marcus dipped a cloth in the soapy water. When the human began to slowly approach, Brutus could have easily struck him down with a single swipe of his claws. Instead, he remained perfectly still, his four eyes tracking every movement. Marcus began with the creature's foreleg, gently cleaning between the scales where dirt and dead skin had accumulated. To his amazement, Brutus not only tolerated the touch but seemed to enjoy it. A low, rumbling sound emerged from the creature's throat, not a growl of warning but something closer to a purr. "There we go," Marcus murmured, working methodically across the creature's hide. "Bet that feels better, doesn't it?" As he worked, Marcus discovered that Brutus was far more responsive than anyone had imagined. The creature would shift position to give him better access to hard-to-reach areas, and when Marcus accidentally tickled a sensitive spot, Brutus actually made a sound that could only be described as laughter. The bath took over an hour, but when it was finished, the transformation was remarkable. Brutus's scales now gleamed with an iridescent sheen that revealed patterns previously hidden under layers of grime. More importantly, the creature's entire demeanor had changed. Where once there had been a fierce predator, now there was something almost gentle. As Marcus gathered his cleaning supplies, Brutus did something that would have been impossible to believe without witnessing it firsthand. The massive creature lowered his head and gently nuzzled the human's shoulder, a gesture of affection that transcended species barriers. "You're not a monster at all, are you?" Marcus whispered, stroking the smooth scales of Brutus's neck. "You're just lonely." The thorn beast's response was a soft rumble of contentment, and in that moment Marcus knew that everything the Zerions believed about this species was wrong. This wasn't just a breakthrough in xenobiology, it was the beginning of something that could change how the galaxy viewed interspecies relationships forever. As the station's artificial night cycle began, Marcus settled down in the chamber with his new friend, completely unaware that his simple act of compassion was about to trigger a chain of events that would challenge everything the scientific community thought they knew about alien intelligence and the power of human empathy. The revolutionary bond, the unexpected return. The soft hum of the research station's environmental systems was interrupted by the sharp hiss of the airlock cycling. Zixara had returned 2 days early from the Kepler station conference, her carapace still bearing the metallic dust of interstellar travel. The conference had ended abruptly when several delegations walked out over disputed research protocols, leaving her with unexpected free time and growing anxiety about her thornbeast specimen. As Eeyore, she made her way through the station's corridors, Zixara's compound eyes detected something unusual. The normal tension that permeated the research wing was absent. The security alerts that typically accompanied any activity near Brutus's containment chamber were silent. Even more puzzling, she could hear something that sounded almost like singing. Following the melodic sounds, Zixara approached the observation deck with growing confusion. What she discovered there defied every principle of xenobiology she had ever learned. Through the reinforced window, she could see Marcus sitting cross-legged on the floor of the containment chamber, his back against Brutus's massive flank. The Thornbeast's forearms were wrapped gently around the human in what could only be described as an embrace. Most shocking of all, both species were producing harmonious sounds together. Marcus humming a simple earth melody, while Brutus provided a deep, resonant counterpoint that seemed to make the very air vibrate with music. Zixara's carapace shifted through a rapid spectrum of colors as her emotional system struggled to process what she was witnessing. Purple for confusion, orange for alarm, and finally settling on a pale blue that indicated complete bewilderment. "This is impossible," she whispered, her mandibles clicking rapidly. The Discovery Marcus looked up at the sound of her voice, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Zix, you're back early. Come meet our friend properly." "Marcus, step away from me." "The specimen immediately," Zixara commanded, her voice carrying the harmonic frequency that indicated extreme distress among her people. "What you are doing violates every safety protocol in the Galactic Research Handbook." But instead of compliance, Marcus stood slowly, his hand resting on Brutus's neck in a gesture of casual affection. The thorn beast rose as well, moving with fluid grace to position himself protectively near the human. There was no aggression in the creature's posture, only what appeared to be genuine concern for his smaller companion. "He's not a specimen anymore, Zix," Marcus said gently. "His name is Brutus, and he's one of the most intelligent beings I've ever encountered. Watch this." Marcus began making a series of hand gestures, simple movements that resembled the sign language used by Earth's deaf community. To Zixara's astonishment, Brutus responded with corresponding movements of his own forearms, creating an intricate pattern that was clearly some form of communication. "You taught him sign language?" Zixara asked, her scientific mind racing to understand the implications. "Actually, he taught me," Marcus replied with obvious pride. "It turns out thornbeasts already have their own gestural communication system. I just learned to speak his language and he learned to speak mine. We've been having conversations for the past day and a half." The Xerian scientist felt her legs grow weak. If what Marcus was suggesting was true, it would revolutionize everything. They knew about thornbeast intelligence. Her species had classified them as dangerous but simple predators, suitable only for containment and basic behavioral studies. "Demonstrate," she said, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. Marcus turned to Brutus and began a complex series of gestures. The thorn beast responded immediately, his forearms moving in patterns that were clearly structured and meaningful. Then, to Zixara's amazement, Brutus approached the observation window and began signing directly to her. "What is he saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus translated with obvious delight. "He's asking about your journey. He wants to know if you traveled far, and if you're tired from your trip. He's also curious about why your shell changes colors when you're upset." Zixara's carapace immediately shifted to a deep indigo, the color of profound shock among her people. Brutus noticed the change and signed something else, causing Marcus to chuckle. "He says the blue is much prettier than the orange you were showing earlier. He thinks you look sad, though, and wants to know if there's anything he can do to help." The intervention, before Zixara could respond, the chamber's emergency alarms began blaring. Red warning lights bathed the room as the station's automated security systems detected the breach in containment protocols. Within moments, the sound of running footsteps echoed through the corridors as the emergency response team converged on their location. Commander Vexcol, the station's chief security officer, burst through the door with 6 armed guards. His dark carapace was rigid with authority, and his multiple eyes were fixed on the scene before him with undisguised horror. "Dr. Zixara, step away from the observation window," he commanded. "And you, human, exit the containment chamber immediately." This violation of safety protocols ends now. Marcus looked at Brutus, who had moved protectively in front of his human friend. The thorn beast's spinal ridges were beginning to rise, not in aggression toward Marcus, but in defensive response to the perceived threat from the armed guards. "Commander, please listen," Marcus said calmly. "This isn't what it appears to be. Brutus isn't dangerous. He's been trying to communicate with your people for months. You just never gave him the chance." "The creature is a Class 7 predator," Vexcol replied coldly. "It has injured multiple handlers and poses an unacceptable risk to station personnel. Security team, prepare to sedate the specimen." The guards raised their neural disruptors, weapons designed to incapacitate dangerous life forms without permanent harm. But as they took aim, something extraordinary happened. Brutus stepped forward and began signing rapidly, his forearms moving in complex patterns that drew everyone's attention. Even the guards lowered their weapons slightly, mesmerized by the obvious intelligence in the creature's movements. "What is it doing?" Commander Vexcol demanded. Marcus translated, his voice filled with emotion. "He's pleading for understanding. He's explaining that he never meant to hurt anyone, that he was scared and confused because no one tried to communicate with him. He's asking for a chance to prove that his people aren't monsters." "His people?" Zixara stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "There are others?" Brutus signed again, and Marcus nodded solemnly. "There's a whole colony of thorn beasts in the mountains beyond the research perimeter. They've been watching our activities for months, trying to understand our intentions. Brutus volunteered to make contact, but when your people captured him, they thought we were hostile. The revelation. The implications of this revelation hit everyone in the room simultaneously. If the thorn beasts were truly intelligent and social, then the Xerion research program had been inadvertently committing what amounted to kidnapping and imprisonment of a sentient being." Commander Vexcol's carapace shifted to a troubled yellow-green. "This is unprecedented. If what you claim is true, we may have violated multiple galactic accords regarding the treatment of intelligent species." "There's only one way to find out," Marcus said, moving to stand beside Brutus. The massive creature's arm came up to rest gently on the human shoulder, a gesture of friendship that was impossible to misinterpret. "Let us make contact with his people. Let them tell their own story." Zixara felt her worldview shifting as dramatically as her carapace colors. Everything her people had believed about the thorn beasts was wrong. They weren't simple predators to be studied and contained. They were people, with their own culture, language, and dignity. The diplomatic implications alone, Commander Vexcol began, but Brutus interrupted him with a series of urgent gestures. Marcus listened to the creature's signs, then turned to address the room. "Brutus says his people don't want war or conflict. They just want to be recognized as equals, to be part of the galactic community. They have knowledge to share about this world, about survival, about living in harmony with nature." The security chief looked at his guards, then at the impossible scene before him. A human and an alien predator, communicating as naturally as old friends, offering a bridge between species that could change the course of galactic relations. "Stand down," he ordered his team. "Dr. Zixara, prepare a full report for the Galactic Council. And Marcus," he paused, looking at the human with new respect, "prepare for the most important diplomatic mission in our planet's history." As the tension in the room finally began to ease, Marcus felt Brutus's massive hand squeeze his shoulder gently. Through their shared sign language, the thorn beast expressed gratitude, not just for the friendship, but for the chance to prove that understanding could triumph over fear. In that moment, surrounded by Xerion scientists and security officers who were seeing their world through new eyes, Marcus realized that sometimes the most profound discoveries came not from complex research protocols, but from the simple human act of treating another being with kindness and respect. The bath that had started it all seemed like a small thing now, but it had been the first step in a revolution that would echo across the galaxy, proving once again that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology or weapons, but in their capacity for empathy and their willingness to see the person behind the monster.